Okay, so the basic concept here with Revit Worksets is I'm going to try to figure out how I can distribute all the parts of the building so that, maybe to use a library analogy, it's somewhat like checking out a book, right? I've taken this compilation here and I'm going to just arrange things so that certain objects are on certain layers. I'm using that word loosely. It's actually called a workset, but it's like a layer. And the idea is that I create things on certain layers and then certain users will basically book out that layer or that workset so that they have ownership of it. And the reason that I've created a multi-story building here is that probably the way that you work on this is you're going to sort of assign work to people based on floors. So one person in your group might be responsible for developing a residential floor, while somebody else works on maybe a podium floor, and then somebody else tweaks the top floor, the penthouse suites, or somebody else works on the main floor, that sort of thing. So that's most likely how you're going to arrange the way the building is set up in these work sets. So basically what we do, we set up our file and we try to get as far as we can with what we assume will be a base condition. Okay. So at the stage that you're at now where you're kind of working on your parkades, you're going to try to get to a good stage where you feel like you've developed it enough and that you've got a sort of standard set of circumstances that everybody's going to work with. Okay. And once you get to that stage, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to save your file. Okay, so we'll just do a basic save as, and then just call this something like pre-workset model or something to indicate that this is the last sort of stage that you were at before you split it up into this workset compilation. It changes the nature of the file a little bit, so I recommend doing this save as so that you've got something that you can go back to if you hit an error or if you don't like the way that you set it up. So this is just a backup. Okay, just a good way to practice though. So I'm not going to do that. I've already got that set up. Once you've done that save as, then we're ready to start doing the Revit Workset setup. And to do that, we're going to use a tab over here towards the right called Collaborate. And then you'll see over here on the left, there's this little icon with the squares and the wrench. And if you just click on that, initially you're going to see this little work sharing warning pop up. It just kind of lets you know that you're about to kind of change the nature of the file a little bit. And it's also giving you sort of a default initial work set. It's actually going to give you two of them. It's going to do one that's for the annotative elements, and it's going to do one for all the other geometry. So just click OK. It's fine the way it is for default. It's going to think a little bit here. And this is that just kind of behind the scenes file change that it's going through. Alright, now what you see here is the Worksets dialog box, and as I've mentioned, this is similar to like a layer manager. Now what's going to happen here, you'll notice, is that I've got a description over here on the left of my work sets, and there are the two work sets that it told me it was going to make by default. And then it's also got this column here for whether or not the work set is editable, which basically just means if somebody got it booked out or not. And then here's the owner. There's my name there. And then we'll talk about these other columns later on. But what we're going to do here is we're just going to click on New. And we're going to enter, we're going to have 4 different work sets, one for each of the 4 floors. So I'm just going to call this first one Level 1. And then I'll create another one. This is going to be Level 2. And 3 and 4. Now at the moment, of course, I'm the only one that's worked on this file, and that's why my name shows up in the owner column here. So this is just sort of the initial stages of that booking out process that I talked about. Eventually what I'll do is I'm going to take my name off of there by relinquishing my rights to these levels, these work sets. And then as I put it on the network, then people in my group will have access to this file and they can book out those work sets. So that's the initial stage here. And I'll just click OK here. I've got 4 levels. And then, as you would assume, the next stage is that I need to put objects on those work sets, just like I would with a layer manager. So to do that, I'm just going to go down to an elevation view. And I'm also going to switch to wireframe. And I'm just doing this so that I can confirm that when I make my selections that I've got everything I need to have selected, and then I can assign those objects to a work set. You're going to want to make sure that you've got your properties window open. It'll be on by default, but just make sure it's open. If you're not seeing it, just click on the View tab, User Interface, and then just make sure the Properties checkbox is selected here. Okay, I'll go back to Collaborate. Now what I'm going to do here in this elevation view is I'm just going to use my Modify tool here, and I'm going to do a selection box. But notice how I'm being really careful here just to select objects that occur on level 1. I don't want to get anything up above on level 2. And notice I've got the floor plate here for the floor above. I'm going to include that in my level 1. Level 1 is going to be a little bit unique in that I'm also going to include the floor below. In all other cases, I'm just going to take the floor plate above. But basically, just everything that occurs between those two level markers is what I want to have associated with that work set. So now that I've done that, notice that over here in the Properties window, it's giving me the ability to assign all those objects to a certain work set. At the moment, it says work set 1. And remember, that was the default work set that it created when I initially started this collaborative process. So what I'm going to do is here, I'm just going to select this box here. There's no button there at the moment, but there will be one when I click. And I'm going to change it from the default work set 1 to level 1. And that's the custom work set that I created in that dialog box before this step. I'll click Apply. And now all those objects are assigned to that work set. Okay, so same thing, same process for the other ones. I'm just going to select everything between level 1 and level 2. And then over here in Properties, I'm going to change work set 1 to level 2. And then up above, same thing. All these objects will go on level 3. And then up above that, all these objects go on level 4. Okay, so all of my objects now, all my geometry, my walls, my partitions, my windows, my doors, my furniture, everything has been assigned to a work set. And if you want a little confirmation of this, go to a 3D view, and you can see that while I'm still on that Collaborate tab, over in this Worksets panel here, this is kind of like a layer selector. So I can just use this pull down here and access each of the workset levels. So if I was to create additional objects, if there was something that maybe I wanted to put onto level 4, I could just select level 4 and then go about creating, doors, windows, furniture, whatever, and drop that into level 4. And it would automatically then put those objects on workset 4. Another little convenient trick here, and a reason for using this workset panel, is if I click this button here, Gray Inactive Worksets, you'll notice that what it does is it just kind of emphasizes or highlights the existing or the selected workset level here. So if I was to switch this from level 1 to level 2, you'll see here that it's helping me to get some feel for what objects are on that particular workset. Just going to help things stay a little bit more clear in my mind. If it's all looking good and all the objects look like they're in the right place, I'm ready to save this file. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be saving it as a central file. So that becomes kind of this point right here. This is the hub. That file then becomes sort of the base for all the work that everybody's going to do. And as they open up that central file from the network, then they'll be able to save their own local file. So you will retrieve this central file from the network, and then you'll save it on your laptop or on your flash drive or whatever as a local file. Then that becomes your file that you save to on your machine, and you can book out work sets so that you can just work on those things on your machine. Okay, I'm going to keep moving through this fairly quickly so I can just wrap up the video, and then we'll kind of come back and we can go over steps and things that we may have missed. So at this stage now, I'm ready to save this as a central file. And so I'm just going to click on the application menu here. And I'm going to do Save As. and just save as project. Now it knows that it's about to save this as a central file because I hit that collaborate and that worksets button. So remember that process that I started a few minutes ago? That's what initiates this sort of central file format. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to save it on my own laptop. And remember, this is where you would actually save this on the network. This step's a little different in my simulation here. And I'll just call this my workset sample. And I'm just going to put the time on this here so I can distinguish it from some of my other files. Okay, I'll click Save. Now this becomes the central file. Okay, this is kind of the hub here. Now what I'm going to do is a little different from what you'll do. I have to kind of simulate a multi-user environment. Just because I'm showing this on one screen, of course, this is a little different. When you begin working on the network, of course, you'll all have 3 different machines, and you won't have to do this step. So just be aware of that. This is a little bit of an extra, just so I can simulate the process. If you remember when I showed you the workset window, it had my username under the owner column. So what I'm going to do here to kind of simulate a multi-user environment is I'm just going to click in Options, and I'm just going to change the username here. Actually, I'll close this file first. Sorry, let me back up a little bit. Before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this file. Notice that there's this option up above here to relinquish all mine. What this means is that if I put the file on the network as the central file, if I didn't relinquish my rights, no one would be able to do anything with this file because I would still be listed as the owner of all the work sets and nobody could do anything else. So before I actually finish this off and create that central file, I need to relinquish all my workset rights, and then I can close it. Okay, now the file is closed. So here's that central file right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to what I described before where I change my username. So this is like somebody else from some other machine now accessing this central file. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this file, which would be on the network. This becomes the central file. If I open that up, I'll see the file, the model, just as it was left. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on the Collaborate tab, and I'm going to click on Worksets. And now you'll see that that initial username is not listed under the owner column here because it was relinquished. So even though this is a little misleading, I know it says that it's not editable, I can just switch this. So now you see my new username shows up in the owner column. So just like with you with your different group members, you'd see your name pop into this column. And as long as you were working on that, no one else would have any rights to it. Okay? So I'll click OK. And then I could go about working on anything on that first level. Now at the moment, nobody else has booked anything else off, so I could actually work on any of this. Okay, so I'll kind of mimic the process a little bit more here in a minute. So now that I've booked out that work set, then as a different user, I would do Save As, Project, and I'm going to call this Workset Sample with the time there, and I'm going to put the username here. Okay, again, this is a step you might not have to do because what I'm mimicking here is that I would be working on my own private laptop and I would save this particular file, called a local file, to my laptop while somebody else in my group at the same time is doing that exact same thing on their laptop. Okay, so I'll just save it there like that, and I'm doing this because I want to close the file, and I'm going to change my username so that I'm somebody else, and then I'm going to book out another work set. Okay, so I'll close that one off. This is what you'll see as you're about to close. This prompt basically says, would you like to relinquish your work sets or would you like to keep them? If you don't relinquish them, obviously no one else is going to be able to work on that work set that I booked out, that level 1. But most likely you're going to want to keep it. And this would be like you going home and saying, or for the end of the day, you're going to say, I'm going to go home and work on this, and I want the ability to just have the ownership of that level 1 overnight. And then when I come back in the morning, I'll log in, we'll do our catch-ups and our synchronizations, and then somebody else could work on it. But most likely, you'll want to just keep your ownership when you close. So now, again, to mimic another person working on this, I'm going to change to another username. Remember, you won't have to do this step. You want to just keep your username the same. I'll click OK. And now I don't want to open up this local file here. I just want to open up the central file. So I'm going to click on this Workset sample. This is the central file. And then I'll go to Collaborate. And I'll click on Worksets. And notice here in the Workset Manager that level 1 is described as being the ownership of TR1. If I was to try to change this no to a yes, then I get this warning that tells me, no, that one's booked out and you can't access it. Okay? So I'll just go ahead and I'll book out level 2. There you can see the different username, so you'll see the group member names pop into that column. I'll click OK. It automatically goes to level 2 here in my Workset Selector. If I was to click Gray Inactive Worksets, you'd see that I could just manage that one. Now remember, at this stage no one's booked out 3 or 4, so I could actually work on objects there. But if I tried to, for example, click on this door down here on level 1 and delete it, when I go to save that, it's going to tell me that I can't do that because it's booked out by the person that has Workset 1. Okay, so I'll just back up and undo that. Now I think I might have that warning probably off my screen here, which is why I can't see what's going on. So this is the curse of having 2 screens. Hang on just a second here. Okay, so there's the warning. Sorry, it just popped off the screen for a second there. So it says it can't edit the element until the first user resaves the element to central and relinquishes it. So I have no ability to tamper, which is exactly the point. You want to be able to just have exclusive rights to something and not have everybody in the group moving everything around and not knowing what the other person's doing. So notice it says here that I can place a request. So it kind of works like a little bit of a messenger system where it would let the other person know that you wanted to work on something and sort of ask them if they were able to relinquish it. That'll just come up in however you want to manage your project. So I'll hit cancel. The door comes back. Okay, so that's basically how it works. I just book things out. I hang on to them as long as I want to work on them, and then when I'm done and I want to make it possible for somebody else to work on it, then I would just hit relinquish. And everybody then would have access to it. Now, the way this will work is that you'll work away on your work set. So let's say this particular user is working away on level 2. If they want other people to see what they're doing, then they'll want to just hit this button here, which is Synchronize with Central. Once you do that, it's going to send all of your work to that central file. So it's not real time. People aren't going to be able to see that you have deleted a door or moved a wall at the moment you do it, but every, let's say 20 minutes or so, you guys can decide exactly how you want to do that, what your timing will be. But let's say it was every 20 minutes, you would just hit Synchronize with Central so that everybody else could see what you had done. Okay, and similarly, you'll also want to reload the latest. You'll notice that's the button right next to it. Usually when you come in the morning, let's say, and you've worked on your project overnight, and you want to see what everybody else has done, you would just hit reload latest. It would search out the central file on the network, and it would retrieve all the updated current data, and then you'd see that update on your file, and you could see what all the current stuff was. Okay, so that is the basic process. There are all sorts of little sort of subtle intricacies to this that we'll work through. But you can see that that's a pretty good way of doing things. It's just a way to make sure that everybody, a team can work on a project and you can avoid a lot of the stresses of not knowing what everybody else is doing.